Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment or medications if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here. Visit bewelltexas.org.
Ooh, welcome to the Gamblin Gauchos. I'm Rob Bro. He's Kyle Jacobson, allegedly audio only. And Money Mainville. We're here in, I don't know why I started that. We haven't done that in a long time. We're in the Gamblin Gauchos studios. Two of three of us have. Shout out to the OGs that know what I was about to say. The only podcast studio with two, what do you call them? What are the things in the background? Breaker boxes.
Breaker boxes.
That was tough. I almost didn't come up with that. We need to get Kyle set up in his new place with a breaker box in the background. That way we can go 3 for 3. Anyways, the Barnett Howard Williams rundown currently looks like this. A little bit of basketball. Texas Tech 3-0. Lady Raiders undefeated. We'll talk about the men's team, the Wyoming game, and a look ahead to Arkansas Pine Bluff before they go to their first MTE. Their only MTE, whatever it is. Then we'll hit the rest of the Big 12. A couple of big losses this weekend, and it only makes you more frustrated that you dropped a couple of these games in the middle of the season that you thought you should have won or you could have won or you were in a position to win, because now Colorado, Arizona State, teams who have taken care of business are in the mix firmly for a Big 12 title. Kansas still bowl eligible. So we'll go through all of that as well. The Kansas City Chiefs are no longer undefeated. They lose to the Bills this afternoon. I saw a popular Kansas City media personality, podcaster, telling every Chiefs fan to calm down. They're 9-1. Nothing to worry about. It's amazing the levels of different fan bases and what they get mad about and what position they're in to be angry at 9-1. It's a beautiful thing. 2 straight Super Bowls, 3 in the last 5. And it's frustrating to be in that position for them, which is great for them. All right. If you want to know more about Barnett Howard Williams, if you need to know more about Barnett Howard Williams, you can find them at bhwlawfirm.com. They are the best, the greatest, the elite, the most wonderful law firm in the state of Texas. Double Texas Tech graduates all across the board. They're with the main partners. They do work in criminal defense, if you need that. Family law, if you need that. Title IX investigations, if you need that. They do it all. They do it all for you if you need them. They don't want you to have to need them, but if you do, you can call them. You can find them online at bhwlawfirm.com. Money. The Wyoming game was our first glimpse at Hans Christian Andersen and Elijah Hawkins. Hawkins still seemingly on a minutes restriction, played 13, but you saw his impact. Hawkins played 20, 25, 26 minutes. You really felt his impact. The team looked different while they were out there, more efficient, faster on defense, maybe. What were your thoughts on that Wyoming game? That was the best game that Texas Tech has played in this young season.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think with Hawkins, it might have been the foul trouble that he got into more than it was a health-related minutes restriction. Picked up 3 quick fouls as he was being pretty pesky out there and causing a lot of havoc for Wyoming. But I agree with you from opening tip before you even saw those guys come in. Felt like you had a little bit of a different edge in that game, especially on the defensive end of the court, which is no surprise. It's something that, Grant McCasland has said publicly leading into the season, hey, this is something that we need to be better at. We need to be better on the defensive end of the floor. He said that again after the first 2 games of the season. We've got to be better defensively, especially after that Northwestern State game. I think they kind of, saw some opportunities to improve on film, and I think that was rightfully understood that way. But having those 2 guys in your backcourt really pioneering things around the perimeter for you defensively was so huge. And I think really what both of those guys are going to bring first and foremost is an offensive skill and just versatility that you don't really have to make up for anywhere else on the roster. But defensively, I was really impressed with both of them. Hawkins, obviously very active hands, super quick laterally, and then Anderson playing his own, closing out well on the perimeter with shooters, staying on his feet, moving well again. But where he really stood out to me was on the offensive end, and I think that's going to continue to be a trend throughout the season. I mentioned it a couple of times throughout this offseason that thought he was going to be really good, and it's looking like he's got that right in front of him. But yeah, a really good game. You had those 2 guys that obviously stood out in their debuts, but just another fantastic game from JT Toppin, who continues to be, I think, your best player to this point in the season. Darion Williams, obviously very good. I think there's a strong chance he'll end up as the best player on this team at the end of the season. But to have 2 guys playing as well as Texas Tech does right now, it's not a position that anybody's going to be complaining about. So Toppin playing well. McMillan played another good game. He's currently one of the most efficient shooters in the country in terms of effective field goal percentage and where he's making his shots, just doing it from multiple levels, getting to the basket as well, and playing some good defense. So yeah, it feels like things are kind of, clicking right now for this team. And again, it's not the stiffest competition. You're in the low 200s in terms of KenPom, and you got a game tomorrow night against Arkansas Pine Bluff, who is 362nd out of 364 Division I basketball teams on KenPom right now. Quite literally the worst defense in college basketball, and their offense is not much better. So, we'll see what to make of that one. But yeah, it's just, I think, another opportunity to kind of get into your rhythm and find out what's going to work for you before you head to Brooklyn and take a step up. You're muted, but not silenced.
Is it fair to say that Kerwin Walton might be the guy who's a little bit pushed out from his role last year? I think Chance McMillan is kind of etching his role, Kevin Overton. And then when Anderson and Hawkins are really back into it, I mean, it doesn't feel like everyone's just going to play 24 minutes a game. Somebody's going to have to take a little bit of a step back. I mean, could it be that Walton really finds 10 or 15 minutes as just a catch and shoot guy and isn't asked to do anything else?
Yeah, I think you're going to see him more in Big 12 play. And the reason for that is because I think a lot of the other teams in the Big 12 are lengthier, especially on the perimeter, than you are. You're very guard heavy and ball handler heavy, which we've seen throughout Grant McCasland's career. It's something he likes to do, and his offensive style seems to complement that. And I think with this team, your best players are there. So that makes sense. It's just going to kind of be about situational basketball. And, do you need more size out on the line? Do you need guys who can put the ball on the floor? Because you're right, Rob, like everyone on this team to one degree or another is showing to be pretty versatile in that kind of role. Chance McMillan doing some good stuff, am I doing the unintentional Rizzler?
No, Jonesy said Rob's so hot right now, so I did the Rizzler.
Yeah, you got Chance who can put the ball on the floor. Kevin Overton, I think, still figuring that aspect out fully, but it's something that Hurdy worked on throughout camp. Looked a little bit better in the opener than it did last game. But then obviously Anderson, Hawkins, that's where they're going to live, Darion Williams. So, what do you need and when do you need it? I think is going to kind of dictate when you get somebody like Chance McMillan or Kevin Overton on the floor as opposed to Kerwin Walton.
So it could be just with those three guys, kind of a hot hand mentality or a matchup-based thing?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Kyle, do you have any basketball thoughts?
Money, how old are you?
I'm 23.
Okay. You're looking good, by the way.
Thank you.
So you weren't old enough to remember like the 2001 Los Angeles Lakers, but they had two guys named Kobe and Shaq. Gun to your head, which one of those guys was the second best player on his team in that era?
Oof. I feel like you're setting me up to say Kobe, so that's what I'm gonna say.
I'm not trying to. Really where I'm going with this is no matter which one you say, it's insane that either guy was not the best player on his team. And that's kind of how I'm feeling about Darion Williams right now. Like if that's your number two, I think we're going all the way this year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think JT Toppin is getting a lot of love right now, and it was kind of anticipated after the conversations that he had this summer. He's getting a lot of looks from legit NBA guys, scouts, even just Twitter button pushers that don't mean much, but certainly can be on the early wave of certain players getting some draft love. But I mean, he is very much, got a lot of eyes on him right now. And I think watching him through 3 games, it makes a lot of sense. He just does a lot of different things really, really well. But yeah, it's crazy. And, even if one of those two guys has a wrong night and it doesn't go well for them, I mean, early in this season, like JT Toppin shooting 74% from the floor, Chance McMillan 74%, Darion Williams 41, Kerwin Walton 44, Overton 42, Christian Anderson 57, Hawkins 60, Cambridge 57, and Federico 100. So you are making shots at quite an incredible clip right now, and the competition is going to get stiffer. I don't want to say that this is sustainable, but if you can maintain at least the degree to spread the ball around and have a threat at every single position, those kind of teams are always the toughest to beat.
By the way, the city of Lubbock is hosting several of these games we've talked about. They'll also host the games coming up this week for the men, at least the first one. Then the Red Raiders will head to Brooklyn. But, Brooklyn's nice this time of year. I think, you probably don't have is the Christmas tree up there in New York yet?
It is.
It is? Okay, well, you can go to Rockefeller Center. But there's plenty of Christmas trees here in Lubbock, Texas, too. And if you want to come down, if you're coming down for the holidays, there's only one football game left, but there's plenty of basketball action right here in Lubbock, Texas. The USA is having a birthday soon. 2025, I believe. They asked this week, what was your favorite event all time in the USA? Do we want to go around the horn? Money, what was your favorite event in the USA?
Personally experienced. I always go back to the Kentucky game, even though it was a loss. It was just deafening in there. Really, really, really cool environment.
Kyle?
February 1st.
Yes, some of the greatest action shots of all time. Bryson Williams in front of the Texas bench was an incredible scene. Just so good. 15,000 strong in there. Mine was from the year 2000. Creed came to town. Scott Stapp ripped his pants. It was just a wonderful, wonderful time. If we asked B.J. Simmons and Cliff Kingsbury, they'd say their favorite time at the USA was the first 3 songs of the Britney Spears concert. So, a lot of great times in that building, but a lot of great times in the city of Lubbock. And if you want to find more than just sports here in the city of Lubbock, you can go to visitlubbock.org, and they can tell you everything that's going on. There's a calendar of events. You can have, First Fridays, art trails, food trucks, regular restaurants. The Michelin Star recently came to Texas. I'm sure we'll have some of those in Lubbock before long. So you can really, really enjoy yourself here in the city of Lubbock, and you can find more about the USA, the experience, the fans, the beautiful agriculture and landscape here in Lubbock, Texas on visitlubbock.org. Only one more shot, okay? Only one more shot to do so for football, but plenty of action coming up. My good friend Lukester from the Discord taught me, well, he was teaching Maddie today, but you can actually sync the calendar to the Texas Tech games on your phone. I didn't know this, but I've done that. And I was looking through it today on my phone, and it's just so many good times in Lubbock ahead. It's ridiculous. So very excited for that. Some new teams coming in. The Big 12 got a new sport this week. Women's lacrosse. Did y'all see that? Florida is coming to Lubbock. Not Lubbock, but the Big 12. I also wanted to ask this. West Virginia men's soccer won the Sun Belt today. I'm unfamiliar of who all has a men's soccer team in the Big 12 world, but surely with Arizona and Colorado and some of these other teams we just added, do we have enough to field a Big 12 men's soccer? Is that why we added women's lacrosse, so that we could add men's soccer in the next couple of years? I would like
cross training.
I don't know. Anyways. All right, let's get to some football games from over the weekend. We'll start here on Friday night. Arizona hammers Houston 27-3. This is a Houston team that won 3 of the last 4 Big 12 games. Looked pretty good doing so. Houston did not look good this weekend, though, and Arizona beat them 27-3. Nothing much to say about it, unless y'all have some thoughts on that game. Yes? No?
Real quick thought on Houston. Yes, they've had a couple scrappy wins under Willie Fritz this year. They've also, I think, on 4 different occasions, either scored 0 times or 1 time. And so it's like when it's not some inspiring underdog victory, it's really, really, really bad.
There's one team in the D1 and FCS levels that have not scored 21 points this year. Do you know who that is? I saw this on Twitter.
Florida State.
Florida State. But they fired their offensive coordinator, so Norvell's fine, even though he's an offensive guy. All right, that takes us to I'm gonna use these in order of importance. Let's go. Iowa State wins for the first time in 3 weeks. This time against Cincinnati. That puts Cincinnati out of the conference race, and Iowa State kind of back into it. Rocco Becht looked good. The running backs looked good. Sorsby also looked good, but just not good enough. 34-17 the final in that one, and Iowa State stays alive to have a 10-win regular season.
Didn't watch a second of this game.
Thoughts on that one, Kyle?
We need to make Iowa State get a real football field before next season.
Oh,
it's ridiculous.
Man, it's bad. I thought Texas Tech just wasn't prepared. I watched a lot of Iowa State football, but it looked really bad when Texas Tech was playing there. And I thought Iowa State slipped around a little bit too, but in my mind, I was like, God, we didn't pack the right spikes. We're not prepared. I was getting ready to blame, the cleats on the loss, and then you won, so I didn't say anything about it. But I thought Cincinnati slipped around even more, and Iowa State was slipping around too. So it's been bad this year. And I'm not saying you have to switch to turf either. I like the natural grass surface, but It's got to be better. I would say next on the list of importance would be Baylor, West Virginia. Baylor rolling. That Spavital offense, where Rob was right, where Rob was wrong. Completely wrong about Spavital coming into the year. I thought that offense was going to stink, and it did. And I thought I was right for about 4 or 5 weeks. But they have absolutely been mauling people after the bye. They murdered you and have pretty much done that to everybody. They're running the ball incredibly efficiently. I don't know if Spavital will last more than a year at Baylor. He might get scooped. We'll have to see. But that was also kind of a classic Big 12 matchup where it was 49-35. West Virginia also looked good at times offensively, but just not enough firepower to keep up with Baylor, which is strange to say after their start.
Yeah, that offense is legit. Ever since they moved on from Finn and put Robertson in, I think, kind of the initial weeks of that transition, you had some growing pains. But I really think ever since the game with you, they've been right in the way that they've been running the football and playing the pass off of that has made things a lot easier for them offensively. Did watch quite a bit of this game. And yeah, I mean, they just seem to like rip these huge runs every week of 40 plus or something. It's crazy. And obviously Robertson being really methodical. I think he started this game like 12 of 12 passing or something like that. But yeah, that offense it's legit.
Kyle.
Sawyer Robertson's a dude. I wish he was doing what he's doing just about anywhere else because he's a Lubbock guy, Coronado guy. So shame it didn't work out for him at Mississippi State. Would much rather appreciate what he's doing from like a different state, different conference. But I guess that's not how the chips fell this time. But he's legit.
Yeah, or I don't know, at Texas Tech. I know he was in the same class as Baron Morton. That was kind of the guy from the beginning that you're not going to go out and get 2 quarterbacks. And Sawyer Robertson wanted to play baseball, and Mississippi State was offering him that. I would assume Texas Tech would have 2. But interesting. It's interesting. And of course, he wanted to play for Mike Leach, so he went to Mississippi State. But Seth Parr, former Coronado coach, was on a podcast, Locked On Baylor, in the last few weeks. He was throwing some pretty big lobs at the Texas Tech recruiting process during that era that they couldn't drive a couple miles down to see Sawyer and just kind of ignored him. So
I think he was also not the only one at that high school in that class that they did that to. There was another young man, I'm blanking on his name now, but an inside linebacker, and I'm pretty sure you had no inside linebackers in that class, and he was committed to SMU.
Isaiah Kelly?
I don't know if it was him or not. It might have been. And then 4 days before signing day, we half-assed an offer, which is just, like, at that point, it's just insulting. I mean, if I was a kid, I wouldn't really even consider that unless there was some extenuating circumstance. I've made my gripes well known about that era of recruiting, so I'm not going to get into that now. But yeah, you could kind of see this coming back when it was like Morton and Robertson in high school, and you're like, yeah, these guys are going to be compared side by side a few years from now. And again, didn't know it was going to be in state and conference when we were doing it, but here we are.
They also had a Jalen Thomas that played 4 years at Baylor and I think is in the league now, or at SMU, I mean. And then Blair Conwright was on those teams, went to TCU and then North Texas. But yeah, a lot of college football players on that Coronado roster that did not come here. I went and watched, I think the year before Sawyer Robertson, went and watched Coronado in the playoffs against Denton Ryan. Spencer Sanders versus Quay Gray, I believe, was the game. And it was pretty fun. Speaking of high school playoffs, these 0-10 teams, Brownfield is 0-11 because they got in the playoffs, but there's only 4 teams in that district. It's just insane. Arizona State, Kansas State. By the way, West Virginia, I think, eliminated from contention. They needed to win out. Arizona State, Kansas State. Arizona State gets off to the 21-point lead. Kansas State wins the rest of the game 14-3, but it never really felt like Kansas State was in that game. Maybe there was a fumble score, turnover kind of 3 or 4 possession stretch that maybe felt like they were in the game. But Arizona State made a stop, and it just never felt like Kansas State was in it. After the game, Chris Kleiman basically said the coaching staff stunk. They've been outcoached a bunch this year and was nearly crying at the podium. And I don't know, this is going to sound insensitive. Let me preface it. If he was talking about some health issues or something going on in his personal life that has made the coaching job harder, thoughts and prayers to him and his family. If he's just talking about sucking at coaching, I mean, come on. Get a little fire in your gut, Kleiman. What are you doing? This goes back to him being like, media, will you please be nicer to us? We're working as hard as we can. I just don't get it. I mean, every man a whiner, and God forbid that catch on. It just is over and over with this program. And Smart Football's here saying, can we discuss Kansas State fans acting like they're completely unreasonable about having a down year? They're acting like it's their birthright to win the conference. And what are they, 7-3? And they've lost to a really good team that just lost to Kansas, which probably burns them. They beat Colorado. I mean, this is not some goofy, Keystone Cops team that's just losing to everybody, but they have had 2 bad games in a row, and really all of their losses have been coaching errors. And Kleiman to come to the podium and just saying, we stink as a coaching staff, and I'm going to cry a little and get some sympathy here. It's weird. It's weird to me. And I wouldn't want that to be my coach's press conference after a couple of losses. I'll just say that.
Yeah, it was a little odd. Thought the game plan in this one was a little odd as well. Just felt like they were really trying to get things going with Avery Johnson, and it just never really happened. It never really felt like he got into a good rhythm in this game, but DJ Giddens was just shredding that defense, but only ended up with 14 carries, and he was averaging almost 10 yards a carry. But they just didn't seem to want to give him the football. Were content on throwing the ball 40 times, and that ended the way it did for them with 2 interceptions. And, obviously whenever you're in a position and you get out, your opponent gets out to an early lead, I think a lot of teams will try to overcompensate through the air. But, man, it just felt like they could have and should have worked the run game into the second half game plan a little bit more, because I thought they found something there. And I think that's a strength of this team when you look at it on paper, is not only Giddens back there, but what Avery Johnson can do with his legs, and Dylan Edwards as well in that fold. Just felt a little odd to me, but I get it. You got to try and put points up quick. But, man, Arizona State certainly had an answer. Monster day for Jordan Tyson and that passing offense, and that team looks really, really good.
If you're averaging 9.5 yards a carry and 6.5 yards of pass attempt, what allows you to score faster?
The run.
I'll never understand that they just go out of their way. But Arizona State 8-2, and I don't want to discount what Kenny Dillingham has done. We talk about Colorado a lot just outside of this podcast and on the podcast. They're a really cool story, I guess, this year, if that's how you want to say it. But I feel like that turnaround has been built around Shador and Travis Sanders, and I don't know that that is a sustainable. You can't get 60 transfers every 2 years and be a long-term success. You can certainly be a long-term success, but I don't think you'd be a consistent one. I think there would be some down years, some lean years in there where not all the transfers hit. But what Dion is also doing is getting 4-star, 5-star transfers to supplement the high school level. He's getting 5 or 10 of those guys and also big transfer classes. Arizona State has done a massive turnaround with 50 or 60 transfers in 2 years, but they're not getting the 4 and 5-star recruits. I hope Kenny Dillingham is, a great young coach and not just a hot young coach. And I hope he is the next Mike Gundy and stays at Arizona State a long time because that's really good for the conference. But I also don't want to look at them and say, man, why isn't Texas Tech doing that? Because I don't know that that is sustainable either. To just get, you're not going to find a Cam Scadaboo every other year. So I don't know. I don't know how it is, and maybe in the new world I'm just slow to catch up, and that is the way to do it. And Texas Tech's not done it well enough. That's why you're not 8-2. But it just feels like Kenny Dillingham has had a really good coaching season. He's a little too aggressive at times, but that aggressiveness has really paid off more times than not. Kyle, any thoughts on Kansas State, Everyman a Whiner, or Arizona State? And also the people are wondering why they can't see you.
I'll start off by saying that I don't really like Kenny Dillingham just personally. Like the way he talks and behaves isn't something that would resonate with me if I were like a recruit or an assistant coach or something. But it's really hard to deny his success and how quick of a turnaround it was. They took 56 players out of the portal the last 2 cycles since he got there. None of those 56 players enrolled at Arizona State because Kenny Dillingham is an NFL Hall of Famer who's on Aflac commercials. None of those 56 players are Kenny Dillingham's own offspring. And none of those 56 players are a generational two-way talent that followed him from a previous stop. So I respect what he's done. Like I said, I don't really find myself rooting for him, but it's pretty incredible to be picked. I think they were 15th or 16th in the media poll, and now they, I think, control their own destiny to get to Arlington and may actually be favored to do it at this point. I do hear people say, like, oh, Colorado did this tournament. Okay, yeah, but there's so many extenuating circumstances. It's not a model that you can replicate. Like, okay, let's just go hire one of the 3 greatest defensive players in NFL history who has this huge marketing engine behind him, name ID, brand power. He's going to bring his son, who's a first-round pick at quarterback, with him. He's also going to bring a generational two-way player with him. You can't replicate that anywhere else. And that's what I find so inspiring about what Dillingham is doing at Arizona State is theoretically any program out there can go hire a hotshot coordinator if they find the right one. And now, with the way the portal is and everything, in year 2, you can be cooking. And Dillingham not only did that at a program that like wasn't that good or serious about football before he got there, they were under NCAA sanctions, and he still managed to get them where they are right now. And so, roundabout way of saying, I also understand the frustration with kind of what I do think is a slightly outdated way of thinking of like, oh, well, it's only year 3 and like, got to wait till year 4 or 5 to. That's hard for me to buy when some of these programs are doing it year 1, year 2, like Indiana, year 1. I know the whole strength of schedule thing, but they have 10 wins. Arizona State doing it in year 2. Again, I don't think Colorado and Deion Sanders is a good example or like a fair expectation that you can replicate what they're doing anywhere else. But yeah, I completely respect what Dillingham has done. And when we beat them in Lubbock, I did not think at the time, like, oh, this is going to be potentially our best win of the season. And we may look back on it, Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day, whenever, and it very well could be our best win of the year. So anyway, I'm with you. I hope he stays and continues to build it there. I've said this on the record that I think Arizona State is one of a small list of potential sleeping giants in college football. And he might be just the right guy to put it all together there. Iowa State and Arizona State are, I think, y'all can check the math on this, 16-2 this season when they don't play Texas Tech. And there's a lot of noise about how terrible Texas Tech is and what a bad, disappointing season we've had. We're also a combined 2-0 against two teams that are combined 16-2 and they don't play us. And I think that's an okay nail to hang your hat on.
Yeah, I think to that effect as well. TCU is a bad loss, but even now Baylor rolling like they are, right? That loss doesn't look as bad as it does. Still looks awful. I don't want people to misunderstand this. Brutal loss. Hated it. One of the worst losses of Joey's career as a head coach at the collegiate level. But they've been pretty good since. So I think when we look at that loss too, it's not going to be to 1-5 Baylor or whatever they were. It's going to be to this Baylor team that finished the season really strong. So you got caught with your pants down there a little bit, but I don't know. I think if you went out, I'm not going to be as upset as I thought I would be at 8-4 after starting 5-1. Kyle, Kansas State, and then did you want to tell the people why you're using your God voice today?
No thoughts on Kansas State. There is kind of like I don't even want to say a rumor going around. I was DM'd one singular rumor about Kleiman. We'll see if it comes to fruition. And I don't know. I feel like this is my normal voice.
Well, it's just faceless.
Oh yeah, I'm not. I would say I'm not very presentable right now, so it's just going to be audio only. If that's all right with everybody.
It's fine with me. I also don't want to know what unpresentable means either. But
I just got some messy hair. That's all.
okay. I didn't know if you were shirtless or.
I'm in the big headboard room, and so
Gotcha.
the messy hair in front of the big headboard, I knew it's going to open itself up to some comments, and I'd rather just not deal with it.
Okay. I wasn't going to say anything.
Respect my decision.
Yeah, I mean, this is an audio podcast eventually, so I don't think it matters that I feel like I've seen you enough, Kyle, that I can imagine.
All right, easy there.
No, there's no bonk. I just was saying I know.
I wasn't bonking you. I was like, more like, okay, yeah, we've seen enough of your face. It's fine if you want to turn your camera off.
No.
I doubt anybody tunes into this and just stares at their screen on YouTube looking at our faces for 2 hours. So that's why I'm also not that worried about it.
You would be surprised. All right. The next two games, kind of opposite effects. Colorado plays a bad team, hammers them 49-24. BYU plays a team with a bad record and hammers them. No, wait, they got beat. Kansas 17, BYU 13. Retzlaff, who has been so good at the end of games, kind of folded on the final drive to not get into the end zone. I thought they would. I thought it was inevitable a little bit that BYU would score on that final drive, and they did not. Let's start with Colorado because I think it's a quick conversation. They're better than Utah. They're hotter than Utah right now. And I think Boulder has become a pretty good home field advantage. By the way, the ideal situation for Colorado right now is that they win the Big 12, but somehow Boise State is ranked ahead of them in the final rankings, and they get the bye, and Colorado gets to host the playoff game. Because I think that atmosphere right now would really do well to win a playoff game with their talent. And I know it's Dion, it's Colorado, but I want to see a Big 12 team into round 2 and 3 of the playoff, and I think right now Colorado's the best shot for that. Am I wrong in assuming that?
I think that's the best shot for sure.
Yeah.
Quick comment on Kansas. When I was a sophomore in high school, we were having kind of a disappointing season. We were eliminated from playoff contention with a couple games still to go. And we were lining up against one of our district rivals who wasn't locked into the playoffs, but they were on their way. But if we beat them, then they weren't going to make the playoffs. So like they didn't have it clinched, but they were about to clinch it. And our head coach told us in the locker room, he said, "Hey, if we're not going, they're not going either." And Kansas, disappointing season. And they're like, "Hey, we're not going to the playoff, and we're going to ruin every other Big 12 school's chances of going to the playoffs." So you almost kind of have to respect it. It's not good objectively from a conference standpoint. But yeah, back-to-back weeks now that they've ruined somebody's, I don't want to say like totally ruined their season because BYU could still get there. But like if BYU loses Arizona State and, Iowa State's out of it as well, Kansas is 100% going to be the school to blame for that. And kind of coming out of nowhere since they were a 6-loss team. So anyway, that to me is kind of one of the major subplots of this Big 12 season is we might have had a path to have 2 teams in, but Kansas screwed it up in consecutive weeks for us, it appears.
Kansas was at one point 0-5 in one possession games. That is 1 to Illinois, 1 to BYU. No. UNLV in the non-con. And then 3 Big 12 games were 1 possession losses. And then they've kind of done the opposite since. I know they beat Iowa State by more than 1 possession, but I don't know. I think Kansas was always as good as they are right now. And they were just losing some tough games. And now they've won a couple tough games. So,
who do they play next? I know the answer.
Colorado.
Are they about to do it 3 weeks in a row?
And then Baylor.
I'm kind of rooting for it at this point.
That was their first back-to-back ranked wins ever. So this would be their first back-to-back-to-back ranked wins ever. And then they finish with Baylor. And that is Colorado at Arrowhead. I would assume that would be heavily Colorado fans-wise.
Potentially, yeah.
And then probably a lot of celebrities there at Arrowhead too for the Buffs. Did you see Colorado was doing their military appreciation and ran out with a flag and wore camo everything on the sidelines? All right. And that was the Big 12 Roundup. We're going to say goodbye to our YouTube audience. If you're watching live on YouTube and you're a Patreon subscriber, you know where to go for the mailbag. If you are a Dave Campbell's Texas Football Republic of Football feed listener currently, and you want to hear the rest of this episode, join us at patreon.com/Gamblin Gauchos. And you can find out where we stream our Wednesday night episodes. If you didn't know, we still do 2 episodes a week. One on Sunday nights streamed on YouTube and then uploaded to the Republic of Football. And also on Wednesdays, Thursdays, Tuesdays on Patreon. And those feature the mailbags and a little more in-depth conversation. So join us there if you want the double episodes or if you want some written content from both Money Mainville and Kyle Jacobson. I believe Kyle has a 2025 roster outlook coming out on Patreon. and Money has written a lot about basketball in the last couple of weeks. So join us there. You can also get access to the Discord server that we discuss on this podcast. Join us there if you want. We would love to have you. $5 a month gets you all of that content and some lifelong friends. You can join us at patreon.com/Gamblin Gauchos. Thank you.